Hello, I'm El Director, and you're watching Indie Rebel. Today, I'm going to take you through my entire post-production workflow process. That's a mouthful to say. And to do this, we're actually going to do a case study of a short film that I shot a couple months ago for a Film Riot's 1-minute short film competition. And that little short that I did is called Rosie, and we're just going to go ahead and take a look at that today. So after we've gotten back from shooting, a day of shooting, first thing I do is I fire up DaVinci Resolve. So that's what we're in right now. This is Resolve 15 by Blackmagic Design. You can see it even down here. It says DaVinci Resolve 15. And we're going to start off in the media page. And the first thing I'm going to do is I come in here and I start creating bins for each day of the shoot. So you can see I've got D01, D02. These just stand for different days. And if I go inside, we can see that I actually have some footage in here, which is cool. I don't know why this one's offline though. We'll need to look into that, I guess. And I go to day 2. I've got all my day 2 footage in there. So what I would do is I would go up to the master bin level, and we just right click, and we're going to add a bin. And in this case, I'm going to call the bin D03. We're just going to pretend it's a day 3 bin. At this point, what I can do is come up to media browser, I guess if you want to call it this, and I would find my memory card, which I don't have hooked up right now, but I would find my memory card, and I'm going to create a job for that essentially. So we're going to hit add job. And so I'm going to say, okay, this is my source folder. This is the day of filming. Where do I want it to go? Well, I want to send this probably to my library drive. And I go into films, Rosie, and footage. And then you can see I've got different folders in here that match my bins that I'm going to be creating later on. So I might come in here and create a new day 3 folder, which, oh yeah, I can't do that from in here. I literally have to go into my browser here to go find that. So we're going to go films, Rosie, footage, and then just go new folder. We'll call this day 3. Jump back over to here. There's my day 3 folder. I would drag that as my destination. At that point, I just hit clone, and what it's going to do, it's going to copy all the media from my memory card into this particular folder, this new bin that I've created right here. And then I would drag the footage from within here down into my actual media pool to be working with. So again, this is just for ingest right now. This is, you're done with filming, you need to get the media off the card, so we put the card here, put where you want it to go here, hit clone. When that's done, drag and drop it all into its corresponding bin. And you can see, so I've got day 1, day 2, day 3, and I've got some other stuff in here too that we'll get into as we go. But the next step now is to actually get this ready for editorial. And so I'm going to go over to the edit page. Now you can edit in DaVinci Resolve. I just don't like doing that personally. So I like using Avid Media Composer, and this is how I get my footage over to Avid. So I'm going to go into that day's bin. In this case, it's day 1, as we know. In fact, let's just go ahead and make a duplicate over here with day 3 so I don't get stuff messed up. So I'm going to come into here, take my day 1 footage, and we'll just drag that into my day 3 bin. This is just creating a whole new copy at that point. And I go to edit. Now I'm in my day 3 bin. Everything's sitting right here. I'm going to select all the footage and right click, and I want to add a 3D LUT. In this case, because I shot it with my mini 4K, I can go Blackmagic 4K film to video version 3, and I find this actually looks really, really good. And so with that now applied, that should apply it to everything that was there. And I'm going to right click this and go create new timeline using selected clips. And we'll call this D3 just to keep track of everything. Time code doesn't matter for this particular timeline. It will matter later on though as we go on. So I hit create. So now I've got a new bin or a new timeline selected with all my footage right here. And you can see it looks nice, semi-contrasty. It's got that LUT applied to it. And I could actually come up, and when I'm done later, I'll select all the footage. Let's see. Right click, go no LUT. And you can see it just got a lot flatter on here. It takes all that contrast out. You can also play, again, this is just for editorial. You go through and basically just choose wherever LUT you want. If you were using a custom LUT in the camera, I might want to apply that at this point. You know, maybe it was some sort of custom film look that I'd created, but most of the time I'm running just, you know, the normal 4K to video stuff. So just do that. There's our contrast, and we're good to go. And you can see, you know, everything's playing back here pretty decent. I'm getting my 24 frames per second playback. So now I need to get this into Avid. We've got a LUT applied to all of our footage. All the footage is down here. In the timeline, this is just for 1 day of filming. So now I would just go over to the Deliver tab. And I actually have a preset already made up here for Avid Media Composer. So I'm going to click on that. Once this is done, you can see I'm using a MXF OP Atom, a DNx HD codec, and I'm doing a DNx HD 36 at 1080. It's a very lightweight codec. I don't need a whole lot of image quality because I'm not going to be rendering out of Avid. I'm going to come back here into Resolve when I get ready to do my coloring and such. So I just use basically DNx HD 36. Here's my audio stuff. Again, I'm not paying too much attention to my audio because I'm going to sync it in Avid before I do my multicam edits, or not my multicam, my dual system sound edits. And then files, just, we want to make sure we use the source file name. That's very important because we want to make sure we can link back to these shots at the end of it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go choose where to stick it. And those of you guys that have used Avid know that at the root level of the drive, you have this MXF with numbered folders, and I just create a new number with each project I work on. So in this case, Rosie was number 4, and I can tell that by looking at the date, and you could see I only have 3.5 gigs of converted footage, whereas I probably used closer to 128 gigs of high quality footage. So by going down to DNx HD 36, it really just cuts down on the amount of bandwidth that you need to be able to edit, which is pretty cool. So I would select this and select folder, and at that point all I gotta do is hit add to render queue, and it's gonna do 30 clips. And again, we're using the source names, we're not changing any of that, and DNx HD 36. I got 30 shots here. I would hit start render and it will go ahead and convert those. Once this process is done, then I am good to go and ready to go do some other stuff. And just for comparison here, so to convert my 30 shots only took 5 minutes to convert. I was just going up through my history here, and you can see that was for day 1. It took 5 minutes to do. Day 2 took 3 minutes to convert. So the conversion process really doesn't take that long to do. A lot of people are like, I don't have the time to wait around for offline editing. It's like, dude, it doesn't take much time at all. Just suck it up, do it. So now we'll hop over to Avid Media Composer, and I'll show you how Editorial goes. Alright, so this is the main page for Avid Media Composer. I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing you guys exactly how Avid works. I just want to show you enough of the basics just so you can see how this all goes. So if you recall, before I switched over, we had just created our offline MXF files that we're going to be editing now here inside of Avid. So I'm going to open up my Rosie project, and you can see everything propagates. And this is my actual edit for the film down here, which is cool. And you can see I've got some letterboxing on and some other details and info that I need. So this is the actual edit that I did. This is all the editing that I did inside of Avid. I have added some sound effects and voiceovers. You can see I've got some VO here. I got a couple sound effects of the gun going off. We take a listen.
I'm all that's left.
So nothing super fancy. I have also dropped in my VFX as well. So like when the gun does go off, I believe there's a flash. Let's take a look and see. Yep, you can see the muzzle flash right there. And that's digital. That's something I added in after. But yeah, so how do we get our footage here to actually do our editing? It's really, really simple and easy to do. Avid has something called a media tool, and the media tool basically lets you browse all your drives and projects and stuff like that and show you all the media that's associated with that particular project. So that is how that would work. So you're just, at this point, it's just editing, you know? There's nothing fancy about it. There's nothing crazy. You just come in here, you grab your clips. Let's see, what are all, oh, that's audio stuff. Here we go, day 1. So you pull up your shots, and I can come in here and scrub through, set my in and out points, and then, you know, if I want to edit this into the end of the project, I can just go and drop that in right there, and you can see that gets dropped into place. If you're looking for me as you grab it, and you can hear me talking to the actors as all that stuff goes on. So I mean, editing's just editing. It really doesn't matter which piece of software you use. I just find that for me, especially when I'm doing narrative work, Avid Media Composer is the most stable. I've never had Avid crash on me once. It's also very conducive to narrative filmmaking, I find. When I'm sitting in here because of how Avid works and how the timeline works with dealing with things like filler and lifting stuff out and having to be aware of your tracks and things, it really is good when you're for working on narratives, because it changes your thought process a little bit in the way you think about things. Whereas if I was cutting in Resolve, which I totally could do, Resolve is more like Adobe Premiere Pro and Vegas and the way it edits, and it just kind of behaves differently. So if I'm doing a quick turnaround YouTube video, I'll do that in Resolve. There's no point in coming into Avid, but whenever I'm doing anything narrative or music video based, anything along those lines, I come into Avid and do it. I even do my survival shows in Avid now too, just because they're longer formats and Avid is rock solid and stable. Now, a few things you do need to keep in mind while you're in here is that because we're going to be sending stuff through so many different pieces of programs, different pieces of software, we want to make sure that, let's see, we have leader. And that's what this is here. I've got a countdown leader. This is my own custom one that I made. You can see it says stars, universal leader. And if we play it through, we got a nice countdown. I actually got this from somewhere off the internet, and I added the stars thing at the beginning. There's a 2-pop. And that leader is exactly 10 seconds long. So if we look at my start frame here, when the movie actually starts, you can see it's starting at hour 1, and then time code is 00000. And that's just really easy for me to keep track of. I know that the hour 1 mark is when the movie starts. And as I start doing other reels, if I'm doing a longer project that I'm going to break into reels after, before I go do my color grade and my sound mix and such, then I will use the hour indicator as the reel number. So I will come in here and say, okay, so this is reel 1, reel 2 will start at hour 2, reel 3 starts at hour 3, and so on and so forth. And again, that just helps me to stay organized, I find. Now that we've got the film edited, we've got leader in here. You can see my timeline starts at 59:49:23, and that's because I got this 10-second countdown leader, so then everything starts at hour 1, frame 0. Now it's time to bring this edit back into Resolve and also over into Pro Tools. So I'm going to export two separate things for this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get this back into Resolve. So I'm going to select my timeline down here, and then I'm going to go File and Export. And then I already have a preset for Resolve set up, so let's see what's involved with that. If I jump into there, it's an AAF file. I tell it to include inactive audio tracks, so even if I went ahead and I muted anything, I'm going to make sure that's going to come out. I always leave this selected, AAF Edit Protocol. I don't know what it does. I haven't experimented with it. I just know that this works for me. The other thing I do is include all the video and data tracks, include all the audio tracks, and make sure that I'm linking to my media and not exporting. I don't want to copy the media. I don't want to consolidate or do video mixdowns. I literally just want to link to these source files. So that's what I set up for that. I'm just going to cancel there. I don't want to change it. But anyway, I saved that as a Resolve preset, so I can come down here and go to Resolve, and I'm already set up for it. I know it's going to work. In my films folder, so we can see here we are with Rosie. I have an XML folder. Technically, this is an AAF, but AAF, XML, it's for my purposes, it's about the same thing. I can come into here and call it whatever I want. So we'll call this workflow cut and hit save. And so now I actually have, if I go back into that folder, go into my library, films, Rosie, XML, you can see there's this new AAF file called workflow cut. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and bring into Resolve. But before I do that, let's go ahead and send this to Pro Tools as well. And so there's a few ways you can do it. One would be you come up here and I go send to Pro Tools 11 and higher, and I can consolidate my media, which is basically it's going to start copying everything and moving stuff around. I think though, and I learned recently, I can just use that same AAF file. So we'll take a look and see how this all goes. But first, let's jump back to DaVinci Resolve, and we'll get this conformed to our online, because right now this is all low quality footage that we're editing with. And we want to flip this back out for the high-res stuff, so we're going to do that first. Alright, so you can see we're back here in Resolve. I literally just opened it back up again, and it brought me back to the screen I left on. So I'm going to now go back to my Edit tab, and you can see that we were in one of our day bins. And at this point, all I need to do is I'm going to come down and decide where I want to put this new sequence that I'm bringing in. We'll just stick it probably right down here. I'm going to go up to File, and I want to import a timeline, and I want to import an AAF. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to go find where that is. Films, Rosie, XML. Here it is, workflow cut. Hit open. Now, a few very, very important things here. First of all, this shows me where that XML is, so I can just double check that. I can give my timeline a name. I usually keep the same name as that. So in this case, it's workflow cut, so I'm going to just leave that alone. Automatically set project settings is good. Sometimes I will uncheck that and set a new starting time code, but everything should just come through this way just fine. Big thing to keep in mind though is this. It says automatically import source clips into the media pool. I'm going to uncheck that because we've already imported everything we need now here. And that's the other thing to keep in mind. At this point, we're only concerned about picture. So I don't need to import all my sound effects into Resolve. I don't need to deal with any of that stuff. I just need to make sure all my video files have been imported, which I know they are because I already have all the days up here. Day 1, day 2, day 3. So all my video footage is going to be just fine. And so I uncheck automatically import, and what it's going to do is it's going to reference now these original clips that are already in here. And I'm going to set my timeline resolution. In this case, I think, what should we do to that? Let's do, because I shot this at 4K, so if I was going to do a 4K master, it'd be probably like 4000 by 1700, and that should be a nice 2:40 aspect ratio with stuff. Hit OK. And it's asking me where I want to import the stuff to. We'll just throw that into the master bin. That's going to be just fine. And you may be thinking to yourself, what the heck's going on? Everything's offline. I'm freaking out right now. Well, if you look at it, it's really just the sound effects. The AK-47 gunshot didn't come through, and a couple other things didn't get brought in with it okay. But I'm just going to close that out. And if we zoom in now to the timeline, here's my countdown leader. For whatever reason, my countdown leader never works. I always have to come in and just replace it. So we'll just drop in a new one right over the top like that. And then, yeah, so now we're good to go there. And then I can just make sure that everything starts when it's supposed to. There it is, first frame of video. And you can see my time code matches up perfectly. So everything is good. And the entire edit is in here now, which is pretty darn cool. And this is all now the high quality. If we look at these shots a little bit closer, you can see it is my actual raw cinema DNG file. So it all came through just fine. At this point, I would want to make sure I go into each of my days, select them all, right click, and make sure that I have no LUT selected. I don't want to be dealing with the LUTs anymore because now that I'm in Resolve, I'm ready to do my color correction as well as VFX exports. And in fact, actually, that's something I would do at this point, is I would go through and I would find all my VFX shots. And let's just go ahead and give ourselves some more room to work with here. So we're just going to bounce that up. Move this down. So let's just pretend that this is a VFX shot. So I'm going to just lift it up one. And maybe this was a VFX shot as well. I'm going to select both of those, copy them, and then I'm going to go and create a new timeline, probably at the master level. So I'm going to say create new timeline. And we'll call this VFX exports, if I can spell right. Time code doesn't matter now. Do this, and we're just going to paste our shots into here. There they are. And then kill all the black space in between. So now I have my shots ready to export for VFX. This particular timeline, if I'm doing VFX, I will probably turn this back to 16:9 and not do it as 240 until the very, very end when I'm ready to do my actual master grading. To send these out for VFX, go back to the deliver page, and if I drop down under here, you can see I've actually got a preset for Natron, which also I will use for Nuke too. And in this case, it's just I'm using a TIFF sequence for Natron. If I'm going to Nuke, I'll typically use like a DPX or something like that, or maybe an EXR, but usually DPX I find works out pretty well. They're larger files. And set your resolution for them and whatever you want it to be, frame rates. I'm working at a standard film frame rate of 24 frames a second. I'm not doing 23.976. I shot it at 24, so all my work is going to be done at 24. And you choose where you want to do them. And the biggest thing at this point is making sure you select individual clips. And that's going to render each shot individually and put it into its own little folder wherever you decide to stick them. So send that over here and hit start render, and now you're ready to go for VFX. At this point, I would probably jump back into here, and let's go back to our other timeline, workflow cut, and I would bring my final VFX shots back in and bring them up onto another track, again, just to keep track of everything. So my final VFX shot will actually go up here. If I can get it in the right track. There we go. Like that. And that's just a way for me to look at this and be like, oh, okay. So I'd have the original unaltered shot down here. This tells me that I've exported it, and then this would be like final at this point. Now I can come in and go to my color page, and I can start color grading the movie at this point. So I usually like to find a nice skin tone type shot, something with skin tones in it. This isn't too bad. This is kind of nice. She's sighting down the gun. All right, cool. And so just really quick, there we go. We would just quickly come in and, grade at this point. Start dropping your blacks. I'm gonna come up to the curves to do that. Bring the blacks down till they almost clip. Same with the whites. Bring those up. And I can see that there is some clipping on there, so I'm gonna take it up all the way at that point. And that works out pretty well. I would probably come into here, increase my red, my greens, and my blues. That might be a bit too saturated for me, so now I'm going to come in and just pull out some saturation from that. And I'm just trying to balance the image, just trying to make sure everything looks kind of decent. I'd say, okay, that's balanced. Go through balance the entire movie, then I come back and start doing my creative grades on top of it, which might involve selecting skin tones, so you use your qualifiers. And again, there's plenty of videos online on how to grade inside of Resolve and to help you figure out what you're doing and everything. And that actually selected out pretty nice. So just try to smooth some of this out a little bit. Clean it. Clean the whites. And blur the snot out of that like that. And then come in here. And we'll add a outside node. Cool. And then I could take my outside node and maybe we'll just shift the blues down, or the shadows towards blue. And then we go back to this one, and we're just trying to make the skin tones look all nice and natural. So again, I'm not saying this is a grade I would do, but that just gives you the example. So you can come in here and basically grade your entire movie. Once the movie's been graded, then I would go ahead, so I've done visual effects, right? I've done the grade. I haven't touched sound yet. Now I come back into the deliver page, and I'm going to export just a small QuickTime file for bringing into Pro Tools. And I like to do it with the grade applied. I just find it's easier to look at that when I'm inside of Pro Tools doing that. So let's go ahead and open up Pro Tools now, and I'll show you then how we do the sound mix from there. All right, so this is the final Pro Tools session. I've actually opened up the final project that I had. To basically bring in a new one, all I have to do is go File, Open Project, and I can just go find my AAF file, in this case workflow cut. I could literally open that straight up. But I really wanted to show you guys not how it comes in, because you saw it in Avid. I only had like 3 sound effects on there. What I want to show you is what the final mix ended up looking like here. So this is after putting in about 10 hours of work into it. There's a lot of stuff happening here. We've got her voiceover on DX1. I've got her breathing on DX2. I've got 5 different layers of sound effects in Foley, including stuff with the horses. I've got rifle handling. I've got 4 layers of atmospherics, so like whales in hell, jungle insects, swamp crickets, some desert wind. All the stuff kind of comes together to really make your full atmosphere work. And then of course you get the music track down below too. So again, for a 1-minute short film, this took me 10 hours to get to this point. But Pro Tools just makes it really easy to do, And again, it was just the same file that I exported once from Avid Media Composer. So that one file became my master in Resolve and becomes my audio basis for the sound mix. The only thing you got to do is bring in an actual video file. So you can see this is a rough cut exported, which I brought out of Resolve after I'd already done my color grade and such. Actually, no, I take that back. This rough cut came from Avid itself. You can tell because of all the watermarking and stuff that's going on here. But yeah, you just open it up and start doing your mix, and you're good to go. So now what I would do, I've done all my sound mix, I'm happy with it. I would just come up here and go File, Bounce to, Disk. And this allows me to just save out my stems. I'm not going to rebounce them because I've already done that. But now I'm ready to go back into Resolve and marry picture and sound together for the final time before I do my export. So let's go ahead and hop back into Resolve, and we'll just bring everything together now. All right, now we're back in Resolve for the last time here. And again, we're right back where we left off. So let's go back to the edit page. And this is our edit workflow cut. Good. Make sure I'm not going to destroy my actual stuff. Let's go ahead and zoom out. And let's go ahead and bring in our audio now. So I would probably at this point go ahead and delete everything except for the camera audio, because that's going to be most important for syncing stuff up. So we'll delete those. Whoopsies. Let's try that with locking that. There we go. And I have an actual audio bin set up here in Resolve. And you can see I've got my mixes right here that I've already imported. So I've got mix A1L, which is left, and A1R, which is the right. And you know, you can always go import media and go find them wherever they were stored, which on mine should be here under films, Rosie, audio, and there's my mixes right there. So I've already brought them in though, so I don't need to redo it. But what I do now is I just go and bring these straight down into the timeline. And I want them to go right at the beginning. So I'm going to drop that one in, if it will let me. Sometimes you got to find the right kind of audio track. Let's go ahead and delete this. Delete empty tracks. There we go. Now we're talking. And bring that all the way to the beginning. And then let's go and scroll down a little bit more. Let's give ourselves some room. We'll do the right channel too. There we go. And now
It came sooner than expected.
I've got all that lined up, and we're listening to the actual. Here, I'll kill these.
Rosie, dinner time.
Coming, Mom!
And everything's in sync. Everything looks good. There's my one color corrected shot.
Everyone I know has been bitten and turned.
So it really is quite simple. You've watched me do this. All I'm doing is just sending stuff back and forth between the different programs, and you can see I haven't had any issues. Everything just transfers just fine. The problem that a lot of people have is they want to round trip from Resolve back into their NLE. So in my case, it would be like wanting to do my color grade here in Resolve, but then bring it all back into Media Composer. It's like, no, why would I go back? I'm doing all my sound work in a separate sound program anyway that's designed for doing sound. That's what Pro Tools is, right? So if I have to export something from Pro Tools, why don't I just bring it here into Resolve, where then when I do my final masters, it's coming off the highest quality possible image, which is my original camera negatives, essentially, the Cinema DNG files. So that's why, for me, this just works out so much better. I bring everything into here. I've literally got my camera files. If I need to make any last minute color tweaks, maybe I'm like, oh, that blue's too strong. Bounce back over to the color page real quick, and then we come in and start, pulling out the blues that we did. We'll just neutralize that just a little bit more. There we go. That's looking a little bit better there. And so now, at this point, I could go deliver, and I can create a image sequence master if I want. I could send this straight to a YouTube file. You got all sorts of different, export options in here and that kind of deal. So, I know there's going to be some questions about this later. Why don't I edit in Resolve? And I kind of touched on that earlier. I find for me, Media Composer is a more intuitive editor when it comes to narrative filmmaking. Again, for a quick and dirty YouTube video, I'm just slapping stuff together, not really too concerned about things. Resolve works out great for that. For me, I'm more comfortable in Avid when it comes to actually cutting together all my footage and such. So I'll do my edit in Avid, I bring it into Resolve, and then you saw on the import into Resolve, the conform takes place instantaneously because I already have all my media in here. And then I do my color grading, I do my visual effects, probably do the visual effects before I do the color grading. And then you guys have seen all my visual effects tutorials, which is why I didn't show you that part. But I could bring my visual effects shots back in, drop them into the place, render this out, throw that into Pro Tools, do my sound mix in Pro Tools, and then bring my audio stems back here into Resolve for the final output. Yes, I am aware that Resolve has Fusion built into it. I don't like Fusion. I find it unstable. If I'm going to crash Resolve, that's probably where it's going to happen. The color tools, of course, are second to none. Like your best color tools out there. You know, don't be grading in your editor. Come over here to something that's designed for it. You're going to have so much more control. Okay, audio mix. Let's talk about that. Why don't I do my audio mix in Resolve? And really, I can't think of a good reason why I'm not doing it in Fairlight, except for the fact that I've got Pro Tools and it works. And it's kind of like one of those things, it's not a big deal to me to do my mix in Pro Tools and bring my stems here into Resolve afterwards. I could, you know, of course, go into Fairlight and do my sound mixing in here. You've got all sorts of great stuff. And if I was a new filmmaker starting out today, I would probably buy the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, which will come with the studio version of Resolve. Now I've got the camera, now I got post-production. You are set up here in Resolve to do everything. You've got your media management, editorial, visual effects, color grading, and audio all in one software package. I think that's great. I'm a big fan of use the best tool for the job, and as I've stated, I do believe that Media Composer is the best for narrative editing. I believe that Nuke is better than Fusion. It's definitely a lot more stable, that's for sure. The color tab, of course, we're going to use Resolve for coloring. And then when it comes to audio, you really can't beat Pro Tools. Fairlight's good, and it's got a really slick interface, but you just can't beat Pro Tools when it comes to it. Like, it handles it so much better and more intuitively, and that's the big thing. But it works for me. So feel free to take what you want from this video. You don't have to copy me exactly. I know my setup is not ideal for everyone. Again, if I was somebody starting out, I would probably just stick with Resolve and just use Resolve for everything. I would not go the Adobe route. I do not recommend any of the Adobe products except for like Photoshop CS6 and then maybe After Effects CS6 for motion graphics work. I would not do visual effects inside of After Effects anymore. You couldn't pay me enough to do that. It's too much of a headache. But yeah, so anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Leave me comments down below if you've got any questions about things. I'll provide links in the description to where you can get all the software and tools that we use today. There are, of course, other lower budget versions of things too. You know, you could do your editing and visual effects and color grading here in Resolve, and maybe you're like, oh, I still don't like Fairlight. Well, you've got software like Reaper that you can use, and I do have that on here. And then you can get plugins. In this case, I've got this converter utility that will take an AAF file or an XML and convert it into something that Reaper can actually read. And Reaper is a fantastic audio editor. It's good. I would put it up there with Pro Tools. In fact, actually, if I launch this real quick, show you how quick it launches. Now, again, I'm using the shareware version here. Because I don't use it professionally, I have not bought this yet. But so I'm still evaluating, but it's nice. I've got a nice little interface. I'm skinning it to look like Pro Tools. It's just something that I like to do. But, you know, it's pretty intuitive, adding your new tracks and all. Add another new track. It's all the same stuff. Do whatever you need to do with it. But the important thing, again, is that I was just showing you guys my workflow. So, again, take from it what you will. Feel free to adopt whatever you want to adopt, throw away what doesn't work for you. But the point is I just want to show you how easy it is to bounce between different pieces of software. That's not the headache that a lot of people make it out to be. There's so many videos out there that they're like, oh yeah, it's such a pain to go from program to program. It's like, no, it's not. It takes literally seconds to bounce from one to the next. The other thing too is I showed you with an entire short film. A lot of videos that do show you the workflow, they'll like take 2 or 3 clips at a time and do it. I wanted to show you guys that it's actually possible with an entire, you know, this is only 1 minute short, but the point is it was a final product that went through this entire pipeline. And you guys got to see that in action. So again, let me know in the comments below. I'm sorry that I'm rambling. I'm El Director. You've been watching Indie Rebel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time right here on this channel.